All right, let's jump right in. We are going to tackle a question that is frankly one of the biggest questions of all, a question you've probably asked yourself a million times.
No, really, just for a second. Who are you? It seems so simple, right? But the answer isn't just tucked away inside your own head. As we're about to see, the answer to who you are is completely and totally social.
So here's the game plan. We're going to start with the kind of mind-bending idea that you have more than one self. Then we'll dig into where that sense of you even comes from in the first place and see how things like culture and the situation you're in can totally change it. After that, we'll get into the science of self-worth, and finally, we'll look at the two big motives that are constantly fighting over how you see and show yourself to the world. Okay, first up, this idea that you aren't just one single, consistent you. Not at all. You actually have a bunch of different social selves. I mean, think about it. The you that's laughing with your friends is probably pretty different from the you at a formal family dinner, right?
This isn't a new idea, by the way. Way back, the famous psychologist William James called this the social me. It's a simple but really powerful concept. A huge part of who we are is built from our relationships. You're not just you. You're a friend, a sibling, an employee, a teammate, and each of those roles brings out a totally different side of you.
So how in the world does your brain keep all of these different yous straight? Well, it uses something called self-schemas. You can think of these as mental files, or maybe even blueprints. You have a schema for yourself as a hard worker, another one for yourself as a fun-loving friend, and so on. They're built from all your past experiences, and they help your brain pull up the right you for the job at a moment's notice.
Okay, so if our identity is built out of all these social roles, where do they actually come from? Who's writing the script? Well, the short answer is other people. They act like mirrors, reflecting back to us an image of who we are.
And this idea has been around for a long time. Check this out. A sociologist named Charles Cooley said this way back in 1902. He came up with this amazing metaphor, the looking glass self. The idea is just so cool. We don't just see ourselves from the inside out. We learn who we are by seeing ourselves through the eyes of others. Their reactions, their approval, their disappointment, it all gets absorbed and shapes who we think we are.
And this is exactly what it looks like in practice. Psychologists call it reflected self-appraisal, which is really just a fancy way of saying you believe what you think other people think about you. The reflection you see in your parents' eyes might be the responsible, caring version of you, but the reflection you see in your best friend's eyes might be the wild, adventurous you. And we take all of these reflections and stitch them together into our identity.
And of course, some of these mirrors are way more powerful than others, right? I mean, the reflections we get from our family, our teachers, our close friends, those are the ones that really stick. It's why things like birth order can have such a big impact. Firstborns are often told they're the responsible ones, while younger siblings might get reflected back as the rebellious or creative ones.
So we know the self is social. We get that. But it gets even trickier because it's also incredibly fluid. It doesn't just change based on who you're with. It changes based on where you are, and even the entire culture you're swimming in.
At any given moment, only a tiny slice of everything you know about yourself is actually online. This is what's called your working self concept. Here's a great way to think about it. Your entire self is like a smartphone, packed with apps. When you're at work, you open your professional self app. When you're out with your partner, you close that and open the romantic self app. It's whichever version of you is most relevant in that exact moment.
Now this is where things get really fascinating. Culture plays a huge role in which apps we even have installed on our phone. In many Western cultures, like the US or Western Europe, the self is seen as independent, unique, separate from the crowd, a solid, distinct circle. But in many other cultures, in East Asia, Africa, Latin America, the self is seen as interdependent, fundamentally connected to others. The self isn't a separate circle. It overlaps with family, friends, and community.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. You can literally see it in the data. When researchers asked American students, "Who are you?" they got answers like, "I'm smart, I'm funny, I'm outgoing," all personal traits. But when they asked the same question to members of the Maasai and Samburu tribes in Kenya, the answers were totally different. "I am a member of my family, I belong to this group." See? Culture provides the very words we use to define ourselves.
So, whether our self is more of a solo act or part of a group, there's another huge piece of the puzzle. How do we feel about that self? This is where self-esteem comes in. And believe it or not, this isn't just some vague, fluffy feeling. It's something psychologists can actually measure and study. So what is it, really? Self-esteem is basically the overall grade you give yourself, positive or negative. And it's helpful to think of it in two ways. There's your trait self-esteem. That's your general baseline level of confidence, and it's pretty stable. And then you have state self-esteem, which is way more like the weather. It fluctuates. Getting a compliment can make it sunny for a few hours, but some criticism can bring in a passing cloud.
And, scientists don't just guess about this stuff. They've developed tools like this one, the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to make you take the quiz, but this is a perfect example of how researchers can take something super personal and subjective like self-worth and turn it into data they can study.
So, why do we even have self-esteem? What's the point? One of the most powerful theories is called the sociometer hypothesis. It says that self-esteem basically functions as an internal gauge, kind of like the fuel gauge in your car, but for social acceptance. When you feel included, valued, and accepted, your gauge goes up. When you feel rejected or left out, the needle drops, letting you know, hey, maybe I should work on my social connections. It's like an evolutionary warning system.
But our minds are not always a peaceful place. In fact, when it comes to how we see ourselves, there's often a major battle going on between two really powerful and kind of contradictory human needs.
On one side of the ring, you have self-enhancement. This is our deep, primal desire to feel good about ourselves. On the other side, you have self-verification. This is our desire to feel known, to have a stable and accurate self-view confirmed by others. So, do you want to feel good, or do you want to feel right? That's the core conflict.
Self-enhancement is that little voice inside that tells us we're better than average at driving, or have a better sense of humor than most people, which of course is statistically impossible if everyone thinks it. But here's the really wild part. A ton of research shows that mentally healthy, well-adjusted people tend to have slightly unrealistic, overly positive views of themselves. Sometimes, seeing that lion in the mirror is actually a sign that you're doing okay.
But then, there's the other side of the coin, self-verification. This is our deep need for other people to see us the way we already see ourselves. It gives us a sense of stability and predictability in the world. So if you genuinely see yourself as a pretty shy, quiet person, a cat, let's say, you'll actually feel most comfortable and understood around people who also see you that way. We crave that feeling of being seen accurately, even if it's not always flattering.
And all of this brings us to our final stop. We've got all these different selves, all these competing motives swirling around inside our heads. So, how do we actually manage the version of ourselves that we present to the outside world?
Well, that process is called self-presentation. It's essentially public relations for the self. We are constantly trying to control how other people see us. And that public image we work so hard to maintain, sociologists have a great name for it: our face. Every time you get dressed up for a job interview or carefully craft a text message, you are engaging in self-presentation. You're managing your face. So I'll leave you with a question that is more relevant today than ever before. Think about your social media, your dating profiles, your online presence. In this digital world of ours, are you presenting your authentic, complicated self? Or are you just managing your face? The answer to that says a lot about who we are right now.